So, welcome everybody, and it does look like we have a screen filled with estrogen. I've got it soaking out. It's great. I love it. Um, I wanted to first of all, this is my plan, to look at a little bit of deconstruction of our stories, and then look at a reconstruction of our stories. I am at certain points going to ask you to speak for sure. But the first thing that I'm going to do is ask you to write some stuff. Before I start though, I'm wondering, did anybody look at who I am and what I do? You don't have to, I mean, it's fine. No, okay. So really quickly, born in Birmingham, into poverty, speech impaired, major speech problems, disappeared into books. They really helped me, and stories really helped me when my mom had major breakdowns and was very suicidal because my dad was selling narcotics. I am so street, you have no idea. And when I started working with young people, I was a play worker, I realized that those stories had helped me through some really dark times in my life. And so I started telling stories to children as a play worker. And then I went to live in Ghana in West Africa for 6 years. And it was when I lived in Ghana that I saw stories and storytelling being used as a tool in social organization and conflict resolution and that kind of stuff. And I've been meshing those two things together, my passion for young people and humans, and my passion for stories and words for 36 years now. I was the National Storytelling Laureate of the United Kingdom. I've performed all around the world as a storyteller, performance storyteller, and my main passion is using stories to enable growth of communities, growth of individuals, and growth of organizations. Mic drop. There you go. I think I'm so street now, but I'm not. I'm kind of more cul-de-sac, I suppose. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm going to ask you to write some answers to a series of questions that I've written, just to start us thinking about what kind of stories we inhabit. So let me do that big for you. That. And you've got just a maximum of 3 words. You can use 1 word to start to describe what a good son is, a good daughter is, a good mother, a good father, a good sister, a good brother, a good student, a good man, a good woman, a good human, a good community, a good school. 1 to 3 words to describe what each of those mean to you. There is no right answer for this. There is only the answers that you're giving that are your right answer. The first thing that comes into your head. Off you go. And I'm going to look at the chats while you're doing that.
Sorry, would you like us to write them in the chat or
yes, in the chat? Sorry, I was very quiet there for a second. I was like, yes, in the chat if you could, that would be lovely. I'm realizing I can't see the chat while my screen share is up, but yeah, all in the chat. Thank you, Lillian. I'm going to give you just about 3 minutes, 4 minutes to do that. And 2 minutes left. Just 1 minute now. Doesn't matter if you haven't finished all of them. I'm waiting for 13 minutes past because that will be that minute. It's taking about 5 minutes. There you go. I'm going to stop sharing now. Okay. Now, if we go through those chats, sorry, I love that. Sorry, that was an accident. What we're going to see is that we all have different ideas about what a good daughter is, what a good student is, a good sister, a good human. And one of the things that tends to happen with us as human beings is we believe that our normal is the truth. So where I was brought up in King's Standing, it was a community that was highly racist. It was a community where there was a lot of social deprivation. And what gave you status and what gave you kudos in being a member of the community was whether you could fix a car. It wasn't whether you went to university. That didn't make you a good person. It's if you could fix a car or if you could shoplift. If you could shoplift, like everybody wanted to be your friend. So unless we start to realize that the way that we think about the world is very unique to us, then we can't start to understand how other people might see us differently and how we might see other people differently. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to ask you to speak to me, and those who can't speak because of the situation that you're in, if you can type something in the chat. So I'm going to take this just a little bit further, this idea that we all have these very different stories about the outside world and what it means to us. So here's the next task. I want you all to close your eyes and I want you to imagine the letter A. I want you all to imagine the letter A. Just see it there in your mind's eye, doing whatever it's doing, that letter A. And open your eyes. I'm going to say your name. I so want to say your name, say your name. I'm going to say your name, and then I want you to describe your letter A for me. So you're going to have to turn yourself off mute when I say your name. So, Grace, what letter A did you see, please?
Just a capital A. It was sort of like dancing, stepping more, I guess, in my brain.
And what colour was it?
I'd say a green. I think it would be a green.
And was it in a particular font?
Like a block sort of font. It's quite thick, I guess.
Okay, so green, dancing, letter A in quite a thick font.
So yeah.
Verity, what did you see?
Mine was so boring. It was a black kind of Arial font, or like Times New Roman, which is really weird because I find that a really hard font to read. But yeah, just like plain black. It's capital though.
Okay, and what was the background of it, Verity?
Kind of like a pink.
Okay, interesting. Laura, what did you see?
Mine's pretty boring, just capital A, quite rounded font, I would say, but white on a black background.
Okay, thank you. And Lillian, what did you see?
Yeah, mine was Times New Roman font on a white background, quite big as well, just a giant A.
And what colour was it?
Black.
It was black. Okay, lovely. And Louisa?
Hi. My A was a big, thick A. In the beginning, it was just white on a white background, but then these flowery patterns appeared on top of the A. So yeah.
And what was the background?
White.
White. Okay, lovely. Thank you,
So
Louisa.
the color was all on the flowers.
Okay, okay. And Pearl, what did you imagine?
Mine was a green sort of capital A on an orange background. Yeah.
Okay. And was it a particular font? Was there any movement in it?
It was sort of a bit pulsing, and it was just kind of quite a chunky, rounded capital A.
Okay,
Yeah.
lovely. Nusaiba, what did you see?
Yes, I saw an A. Can't really see the dimension of it, but it was mixed with number ones. I saw A and number ones, but don't know how to position them.
And did you actually, when you say that you can't see the dimension, were you actually seeing it in colours and stuff, or were you more imagining it without seeing it?
No, it was blurred.
It was blurred.
It was,
okay.
I guess the connection between the A as the first letter of the alphabet. That's it. But I can imagine like in a copper black font, very round and very not really straight, but a little bit oblique. Yeah, that way.
Okay, perfect. And Ruth, what did you see? Or has Ruth just joined us?
Hi, sorry, I've only just joined you.
Okay, just wait there then, Ruth. I'll come back to you. So, Katrice, can you write what you saw? Can you speak what you saw? Capital A on a white background. It was flashing multicolored and spinning bigger and smaller, kind of like a disco light, if that makes sense. I love it. Even if it doesn't make sense, I love it, to be truthful. And then that was Katrice. Zara, what did you see?
When I imagine things, I don't see in color or shape or anything. I just think of the abstract concept, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't really see anything. I just thought of A.
Okay. So there's 3, 6, 9, 12 of us here, and we can't imagine the letter A in the same way. So what does that mean in terms of when we say, I'm a good daughter? If we can't even imagine the letter A, if we even not mess it up, if we even imagine that in different ways, do we really think that when we say, I am passionate and engaged and a person who's got strong integrity, do you think that's going to mean the same to you as it does to somebody else? Because it absolutely isn't. And one of the things that we have to become aware of when we're presenting ourselves to people and when we're meeting people is being aware that if we can't even imagine the letter A in the same way, we have to be careful of the assumptions we make. Zara, I am the same as you. I can't see any pictures in my head. I have something that's called Aphantasia, which I think sounds like a Disney princess, like Princess Aphantasia. It isn't. It is a condition where you have no internal imagery. So when people say to me, I don't know, what was that woman wearing? I can't see what the woman is wearing, but I can speak the description almost, but I certainly don't see pictures in my head when I think. I have no visual imagery at all. So when I work with stories and when I think about storytelling, I think about 3 different areas. The first area is traditional stories. So these are all the old Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, Little Red Riding Hood, all those old traditional stories. I know about 350, 400 stories. So if I'm working with a group of Somali women, I can refer back to the story of Dagdir, who is a little bit like the witch out of Hansel and Gretel. If I'm working with a group of people in Palestine, I can talk about Layla and the wolf, which is like Little Red Riding Hood. So I have this big reservoir of traditional stories that I can tell at the drop of a hat. But I've been doing it for 36 years, so I hope that I do have that much. So I work in traditional stories, I work in personal narratives, And personal narratives come from your parents and from your teachers. And these personal narratives are the stories we believe are true about ourselves. We don't even question these stories. So my mom used to say to me, she was a great mom, brilliant mom, lovely mom, was the best mom that she could be, based on what she knew about being a mom. Yeah. She would say to me, Katrice, don't wear a round neck on your clothing because your neck's really short. So you need to lengthen your leg. Wear V-shaped clothing. Don't wear long earrings because it will only bring attention to how short your neck is. Don't wear ankle straps on your shoes because you've got quite fat, stumpy little legs and you need to lengthen them. I'm only 4'11", I'm quite short. My mom was trying to help me become a better woman because her story about women meant that you had to be slim and attractive. So I became bulimic, I self-harmed, I had anorexia, because the story I believed about myself was that I was a short, fat, ugly girl. I never questioned my mum's stories when she told me those things. Quite often, we will swallow these stories as kids. You're so quiet, you're so noisy, you're so shy. Why don't you speak up? You're such a good girl. She always gets A stars. That's a bit of bloody pressure. That's a hard story to live up to. I think sometimes we think the most difficult stories are the ones that are negative. Yeah, oh God, he'll never amount to anything. Geez, God, you know, he's no good. That's actually quite easy to live up to. It's far more difficult to live up to being Hermione Granger. So there's a certain pressure in those positive stories as well. And then I work with the social and cultural narratives. So as I said, in my community, when I was young, you didn't get any kudos or any status for being a swot. In actual fact, they picked on you if you went to college. That wasn't a good thing. They thought you were a snob. I live in Ghana. I lived in Ghana for 6 years in West Africa. People would come up to me, and I'd always struggled, as you've just heard, with feeling that I was too fat and too short and certainly too pale. I mean, my skin was like the whitest of the white skins. And when I went to Ghana, I took false tan to Ghana with me because I didn't want this ugly white skin. Because in Britain, it's good to have a tan. And when I went there, people would come up to me and go, hey, you are looking fat today. And that was a compliment because in Ghana, you are more beautiful if you are fat. And suddenly this idea of cultural narratives dropped like a bomb into my head. And the only reason you're more beautiful, and this was like back in the late 80s, early 90s, and I was living right up in the north of Ghana, the only reason you were more beautiful was because it showed that you had money, because you had enough food to eat. I had no idea in those days about white privilege. I had no idea about the fact that my white skin will get me further in hospitals in Ghana. I would go to the front of the queue. I just hated my white skin. And then my friend Yusula, a Ghanaian woman, would have skin bleach to be paler and be eating all the leftovers and the kosi, which are deep fried bean cakes, to become fatter. So she wanted to be pale and fat, and I wanted to be brown and skinny. And I thought, who the hell is telling us these stories? Who decided what beauty was? So I deal with personal narratives, cultural narratives, and traditional narratives, because one of the best ways for exploring those uncomfortable narratives that we live in and those uncomfortable narratives that we believe about ourselves is through traditional stories. So if I'm working with young women who are bulimic and anorexic and self-harmers, I use the story of the ugly duckling. And you can kind of go on a journey with that story without having to face the reality yourself. I'm going to do another screen share, and I'm going to talk a little bit while the screen share is up. Are you ready? That was like a lot of information. We'll have a quiet moment to digest it. Okay. So here we have traditional narratives, personal narratives, and social and cultural narratives. And just now, I would like you all to write down one traditional story that you've always loved, a fairy tale or a story that you loved when you were younger, that has kind of stood with you somehow. I'd like you to all write down one personal thing that you believe about yourself. Either I'm a very good daughter, or I'm not very good at maths, or I'm not very creative, whatever it is, one personal thing that you believe about yourself. And I want you to identify one social or cultural story that you think affects you personally. So I want you all to write down your favourite story. I want you to write down a personal thing that you believe about yourself, a personal story, just one little phrase, and then a social or a cultural story that you think affects you directly. You've got 4 minutes. Write that down in the chat. I'm going to stop the share just so that I can see your comments, because I can't do both while I'm screen sharing. So it's traditional, personal, and social or cultural. So just type those down in the chat. Thank you, Verity. Oh, it's heavy stuff, Pearl. I tell you, bloody capitalism, and oh, yeah, it's a dark cloud. I'm starting to share my knitting with you, Verity. It is so not good, but I love doing it. Oh, Boy Who Cried Wolf, yeah. And the rest of you, if you can put yours through now, or whatever you've done so far. I think the most important thing about your hobbies is you have to enjoy them. That's the thing. Frog prints, yeah. Yeah. Isn't that the truth? Absolutely makes sense, Laura. Mm. Mm. Well done, Louisa. It's balanced perfectly. It was like, it was looking like you were just like, just stay there now and I'm here. It's perfect. Okay, right. So I'll close that down. So for me, you can't begin to work with story unless you know what forms your own story. And quite often we sabotage ourselves from taking chances, from stepping forward, because we believe these negative stories about ourselves. And quite often they stop us doing things that do give us joy, like we are expected to be perfect at these things. And so because you feel that you're not perfect, then you're not going to do it. There are so many stories about me being not perfect. I am perfectly imperfect, and that gives me a great sense of freedom. There is also something to do with all around you. It's not just the stories you hear, there are the stories that you see. When I moved to Sweden, I've been living here just coming up to 4 years now. In Sweden, there are less pictures of women with push-up bras or like those jeans that make your bum look firmer, or lots of makeup. And a lot of women in Sweden don't wear much makeup. And the images that you see are of very healthy women. It's all training stuff and running and sports bras. And I was like, wow, this is so healthy. Look at this. You don't need to be sexy in Sweden. You've got not all this stuff where you have to have the push-up bras and the push-up bum and the stuff. And actually, when I was speaking to Swedish women, they said there's so much pressure on them to be healthy and to look natural. So there's a huge amount of Botox being used here. And when you see the images of the women, they've all got slight six-packs in the sports stores and in the kind of clothing stores. And you have to become aware of these things because you're swallowing them the whole time you're walking through whatever city centre you live in. They are all around you. It's like you're swimming in a sea of stories without even realizing it. So one of the first things that we need to be able to do is identify the stories that shape us and choose the ones we want to keep and get rid of the ones we don't want to keep. And literally, you can actually have an exercise where you sit down, you think about all the stuff you believe about yourself, and then you go, and why do I believe that? And then you go, and where did that come from? So what do I believe about myself? Why do I believe that? Where did it come from? And I can trace, that stuff back to my mom. She never said to me, like, you're really fat and ugly. She just said, you don't want to bring attention to the little chubby bits, Katrice. I mean, she loved me to pieces. And she was the best mom that she could be. I think one of the great things about becoming an older woman with me grey hair is that I understand that there's not one story about my mom and there's not one story about my dad. My dad did sell narcotics for a very short time, for about 2 years. I could tell you, yeah, my dad was a drug dealer and he made my mom have a nervous breakdown. She tried to kill herself. That's true. However, my dad also took us on picnics and he sang to us and he pinched our bums when we ran up the stairs to bed and he gave the best hugs. What story do I choose to tell you? And what story do I choose to tell myself? My mom, brilliant mom, sang to me, tickled my face with her long fingernails, did amazing food, taught me to cook. Also would lock herself in her bedroom and not come out. What story do I choose to tell you? And what story do I choose to tell myself? The most difficult thing we have to do as human beings is to hold the complexity of our own story so that we can understand the complexity of other people's stories. We do not have one story. I believe myself to be a lovely person, but I've done some shit stuff. I have really struggled with things around trans rights, because as a kid, I was freaked out by trans women. I was scared. And then I watched that thing on Netflix, that documentary about representation, and lots of trans women have been represented as serial killers. You know, you watch any NCIS, quite often it's and look at Silence of the Lambs. You know, that's what I was watching, swallowing the story. And then also, if it wasn't somebody who was a serial killer, they were somehow somebody who was a bit freaky and had to dress up in their mum's nightie and dance around. I knew I was uncomfortable around trans women. I knew that. Even men who wore nail varnish, it's like, ooh, it's a bit weird. I lent into that discomfort. I lent into, Katrice, you are not a nice person for believing this. You have to educate yourself on where that story comes from. I watched the Netflix series. I watched Pose. Can highly recommend Pose on Netflix. All about the trans community in the States. And I'm sitting there going, well, no wonder I felt that way about trans women, because the stories I had been given were so negative and so limited, and they were not even told by trans women. How dare anybody tell your story for you if they have not lived your life, especially as women, especially as all of us here. We will have people saying to us, oh no, what you mean is, no, don't tell me what I mean. I own my story. Right, I'm going to do another little screen share, and you have a task. Could you hear my anger? I think as I got older and I've hit the menopause, my ovaries have dried up into small fists of anger. Great image. Oversharing, don't care. So I'm going to do a little screen share with you. And you've got a lovely task. I'm going to talk over the image that I'm going to share with you. So I'm going to move on now to story structures. I'm going to let you read the screen first. So we'll have a little look at that screen and make it bigger for you. Just have a little look. You don't have to understand them. So when I was talking to you about, I use personal stories, traditional stories, and cultural narratives, and I work with all of those. One of the things that is incredibly powerful is if we tell our personal stories or share information about ourselves using a traditional story structure. I do this in organizations, I do strategic narratives and things like that. And when you use a traditional story structure, people respond to it like they're listening to something that they had kind of forgotten, rather than learning something new. Because we all know, you know, it's 3 bears or 3 billy goats gruff or 3 little pigs, and we know you have to go on the quest and reach a high point and come down the other side. It doesn't matter what country you've come from, those patterns and structures exist in all of them. So when we share our information on that kind of a structure, people link into it in a very different way to if we were giving a load of bullet points about what we can do. So what I want all of you to do is start to think about your personal stories, what you want to do, what you want to share with people. And I'm going to ask you to think in terms of this cycle. And what this is, and it's the image that is up now, is I want you to start off thinking about who you are and what your core values are. What is important to you? Is it kindness? Is it truthfulness? Is it, you believe that, you know, if you say something, you should do it? Do you believe that we should all work hard, and you hate it when people slack off, you know? So all of us here have got quite strong core values about certain things, you know, that are very important to us. So I want you to think about who you are. So I might start off saying, you know, my name's Katrice. I'm a storyteller. I'm a woman who's really passionate about engaging with people. And I think it is vital that everybody has the chance to share their story and have their voice and their story valued. We all deserve that, irrespective of what our background is and what our ability is. So I've started off with who I am and what my values are. I think everybody should be able to share their story. We're equal. What my vision and dream is that, and I want to, and this is a secret, but this is what I would love. Okay, shh, don't tell anybody else. What I would love is to set up a community whereby we have people enabling those others who believe they have no voice and have no story to find it and share it. I'd love to create some kind of huge online community where we support each other, find our voices, raise our voices, and effect social change for the stories that we share. But here comes the threat. What is the threat to this? This has to be a story, so we need the baddie to come in. It's like, duh, duh, duh. But digital media is being used for some really shadowy, dark reasons. And we can't trust everything that we see on the screen. And so I want to create an online community that is visible and is safe and is trustworthy and can beat down the demons of fake news. Sounds quite good so far. And who will your allies or your gifts be? Now, when you're trying to engage people with your story, if you're going to go for funding, if you've got an interview coming up, one of the things that is really clever and a little bit manipulative is you say that the people who you're talking to are going to be your allies and your heroes. So I might say, and I want all of you 12 there looking at me right now, I want you to come and help me. I want you to be the heroes by my side, going forward into this vision that I have and making all of that possible for people. You might say, instead of saying, and I want you, this university, to be my ally and give me my place. I want you to help me on my journey. You might say, and I want all the young women who feel that they haven't got a voice to come forward and to trust in this organization that I'm setting up and to become the spokespeople for this organization. So you need to name who your allies are and the kind of gifts that they might give you. So you can show people who you're telling this story to how you're going to implement the story. And then finally, you link it into how great everything will be when all of this is accomplished and how you will share it, the big picture. And you have to link that back into your core values. This is a really simple system for developing a story. I just had somebody write to me this morning who said that they'd been watching, I've got a YouTube channel and I've been doing all about how to va-va-voom your Zoom. And I've shared these sorts of things on it. And she used it in an interview. She used some of the techniques and she's just got a job. And she wants me to coach her in how she can develop more. So these very simple steps do work. Now, what I want you to do, did you see my eyebrows? I wish I had those eyebrows that can go like that, but I don't, unfortunately. Both my children do, but I don't. What I want you to do is I want you just to start to scribble down and write down yourselves, not on the chat, yourselves, your story, what you want to accomplish, what you want to do, where you want to go, based on these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. And I'm going to give you, for example, the XY 50, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 minutes until 5 to. It doesn't have to be finished. This is just a tool that you can use to help you structure any information that you want to give in an interview, in an application for university, if you want to bid for funding. This is a really simple system to use. So you have 8 minutes to start to scribble that information down. Off you go. It's 4 minutes left. Okay. There we go. It's an interesting little scheme. It's funny, the woman I was talking about who said she got the job, I was saying, oh, if you could put that on my YouTube channel. She's like, yes, I will. And I want to shout it from the rooftops. And also, you are a joy to watch. Yay. I want to invite any one of you to be vulnerable enough, scared enough, anxious enough to be brave, because you can't be brave unless you feel scared, obviously. So I want to invite any of you to feel a little bit anxious and scared enough to share what you've got. Yes, Grace, off you go. You a hug. Thank you.
What I was trying to base this on at the moment, because there's different situations that I feel like require me to think in this sort of structure. You know, for example, I'm in my 3rd year, I'm doing my dissertation, so I have to think about project plan. At work, you know, there's different little things. So I just sort of did a general one of like life. So who are you? I just put stuff like smart, funny, I'm compassionate, intelligent, intuitive, brave, caring, witty. That was just a little short one. I'm sure there's many more. There are many more. My vision is to empower people, to sort of help guide people, sort of enlighten people as well, and create art, of course, whether that be I do theatre, through writing, through poetry, through anything art. A threat to this is obviously like capitalism, the system, manipulative news, you know, and people that just don't really care and have just sort of been brainwashed a little bit and a bit too far in to be pulled out, maybe, I don't know. My allies, I'd say, you know, young people, other creative people, I guess I just say people in general, people that want change, people that want to see different, I suppose. And the big picture, this one I was like, I was going to put a question mark because I'm not quite sure, but I guess realistically is that from all these different things is that you will want better, and to want better you have to fight for better, whatever that means. So I'm not quite sure yet, but I guess the bigger picture is that we want something different as a society, is that we will want something different, so it will require a fight, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Thank you so much for sharing, really. I do a podcast as well called Unstuffing Our Story, and you sound just like the woman who I just interviewed, which is great. So Unstuffing Our Stories, and it's on all platforms. The 3rd one's just come out.
YouTube. Sorry.
Yeah, and on my YouTube it's just Katrice Horsley, but look for Vavavoom Your Zoom, because it gives you loads of tips on digital presentations, voice, I mean the whole shebang. Who else would like to share what they've got? And I would really love it to be somebody who really doesn't want to, because, you know, I was the girl who couldn't speak. I was the girl who had a major speech impediment. I was classed as educationally subnormal. All of my teachers told me I had no self-confidence whatsoever. And I can remember that lump in my throat when the teacher would ask me a question. I was like, it was horrible. I could feel, you know, the redness coming up and the heart beating. So I know exactly how that is. And hey, I became National Storytelling Laureate of Great Britain. Woo! Come on, you can do it. So who's feeling uncomfortable enough to do it?
Can I?
Yes. Woohoo!
Okay. I'm sorry for my English, but I just moved to UK, so still
Be better than
I have to translate everything, I think. So for who I am, I just wrote that I'm Nusaiba, 25, world inhabitant, and in need for leaving a mark. I guess not in a egoistic way. Just like
Mark, it doesn't have to be ego. We're all here for a reason, you know? Yeah.
Exactly. For core values, I wrote freedom, equality, diversity, and sustainability. My vision is my dream is to have a collective of artists with the same values.
Yeah.
And my threats is the misunderstanding from the communities, especially when we talk about equality and diversity. It's not that obvious to be part of the society if you're part of a tight community. Especially, I'm talking as a kid of immigrants. I'm from Italy, so I'm now the second time immigrant. And my allies are young, energetic artists. And for the big picture, I wrote revolution of principles. And so this project is actually something that I've been thinking about for years. But then I came here just 2 months ago. Coming here, I really realized that the power that this project can have, especially in Italy, even if I don't like thinking of myself like based in a specific place in the world. But since I grew up in Italy and I lived in Milan, I really think that there's a need of involving everyone and having representation of different colors, beliefs, of everything in every part of the society, in every public space, in every school, in everything. And I don't know, I'm hopeful, I'm positive that we can reach that level of society.
Well, look at just us here, all with our different letter A's and all together wanting to change the world, leave our mark in a better way,
Yeah.
I'm going to say something to all of you as young women. Never say oh, it's like this. It is this. But too often we will be challenged. Are you sure? Always. It will always happen. And if you're a Muslim woman or a woman of color, you'll be challenged even more. That story. So really try and get out of the habit of, well, it's like, I'd like to kind of. No, I am going to in this way. You own it. You own it. And I know it's hard because we are taught through the story of, as women, it's like, well, I'll have a little bit less food on my plate. You have more than me because, you're, and it's almost, we swallow it. I can remember giving my first husband more on his plate and more to my children because as a mom, you sacrifice. You martyr yourself for your children. I wouldn't want any of my kids to martyr themselves, to be truthful. So own those statements. Yeah. When you are doing your presentations, and this is on my Vavavoom Your Zoom, it's all free, I'm so brassic. I really am. Sweden's a hard nut to crack with work. And you're talking about what you want to do and how you want to do it. Do not go, and I want to do this, and I want to do this, or, and this, and this, and this. And if you're talking about your story, and then I went here, and then I did that, and then forget that, because that is a list, it is not a story. Use, and I moved to this country, but while I was there, you've got your threat. You've got, oh, what happened? Oh, but. But is a word that's like, what went wrong? And then you go on to therefore or so. It is a really easy way of making what you're saying more interesting, rather than it being a list of countries you've been to, universities you went to, subjects you studied. And I studied this and this, but I found out that I needed to move onto a different subject. And so I went and studied social work, and it was incredible. I found out that that was the place I wanted to be. Rather than, and I went to university and I studied geography and I studied humanities, and then I went to do social work. Oh, great. Oh, sorry. What were you saying? So, and, but, and so, or and, but, and therefore. And it makes everything way more engaging. Simple tip. Now,
Thank you.
You're welcome. Culture response unit. Was this just for an hour? Did you think it was for an hour? You guys. I thought so. You people. Stop using guys, Katrice. So gender specific.
You've got up until 2:30 if you wish to carry on.
Oh, I can't carry on until yes, okay, I will.
If everyone is.
Are people open for just a little bit longer? Is that cool? I'm not. I'm just like, thank you. My ego's just been so massaged. It's lovely. Because I would love for anybody else to share a little bit, and then I'm going to do a little bit about about communication skills. So would anybody else love to share what they've done? Did you hear how lovely my voice was when I said that? It's like, would anybody else love to do that? Because like, you can, because it's just little old us. Come on, you know you wanna. Ruth, did you just move towards your microphone? Oh,
it was because I saw Louisa with a hand up, and I was like, "Oh, Louisa."
Okay. So Louisa and then Ruth. Excellent.
Oh, okay.
Louisa, brilliant. Yeah. Are you going to talk, Louisa? Oh, Louisa, yes.
Okay, I'll be fast then.
No, don't be fast. Take all the time in the world. You're freezing a little bit, Louisa. No, you're freezing. Oh, and now I can see you've got, and now you're in slow motion. Oh, damn. And it looks like you're still on mute, Louisa. Louisa, you've turned your camera off, but perhaps your sound will work better because your camera is off. Try speaking. Oh, seriously, my heart is in a little knot in my chest because you're all... Louisa, try speaking with your camera off and let's see if we can hear you. Nope. No, it's not working. Louisa, I'm going to let Ruth go. And while Ruth is talking, then perhaps you can find a better connection. Sorry. Okay, Ruth.
Okay. All right. Okay. What are your core values? I put that like kindness is really important and like being kind to people. And I guess this is a core value, but it's a bad one, that other people's opinions matter more than mine. But it is a core value and it's something that I need to unlearn. And what your dream is, to be a respected artist. I'm not sure in what capacity, like I am extremely passionate about becoming a director, acting. I love everything, everything to do with that. And my dream is, I guess, to make people happy through art. And for the number 3, I put that social media is too negative, and then I kind of put as well that other people's opinions, because I believe that other people's opinions matter more than mine, that other people's opinions are so negative, and like if they find it negative, then that's a threat to me anyway.
Yeah.
Who will your allies be? I guess friends, and I said friends because like I've been like tried to immerse myself with like lots of creative people because they're like creative and kind, like I try to be. And the big picture, I guess it's because I have this thing where I'm like scared that I have gone through like rough moments in my life, but I'm scared that other people's moments in their lives matter more than mine. So I feel kind of like my opinions and my experiences aren't as worthy to be heard as other people's, and that's something that I really struggle with. So the big picture for me was to make many different stories that cover everyone's experiences and can relate to everyone in some way, and therefore to encourage a better society and to encourage kindness, which is kind of linked to my core belief.
And when you deliver what was an incredibly moving and wonderful talk. You can't do the Wallace and Gromit face at the end. You can't go there. You have to get a mic drop. No, it's fine. You have to get a mic drop. Okay, we all have to get a mic drop at the end. I'm going to come back to you with that, because one of the really interesting things about what you're saying is this thing about other people's worth is more than mine, you know. And I went from being speech impaired and having no voice. Literally, it was everything that came out my mouth was all mashed up and people couldn't understand me. And then by the time I'd finished speech therapy, I could speak, but I was too scared to speak because I was still scared that people would do that. And then by the time I reached my 20s, and I moved to Ghana for the first time with my first husband, and my daughter would have been about 1.5. I've never been to university, and my first husband had, and all the people who we were living with in Ghana were all consultants, and they had PhDs, and they had all these qualifications. And I came from a council estate in the north of Birmingham where it was good to be a shoplifter. And so then I believed that my voice had no value and had no worth. So there was no point in me using it or saying anything. And I think, I mean, for me, it was certainly later on, I suppose in my 30s, even though I was doing storytelling work with kids, so it didn't really count, or I was doing some training, but it was story, which wasn't academic. Somehow in my head, I could do that. It wasn't until my 30s that I believed that my voice had any value and that my story had any value. So I kind of want to tell you that you're not alone in any of that. And in actual fact, it's one of the strongest cultural narratives that we live in as women, is that our stories are worth less than the stories of men. And there is a bloody phenomenal book out at the moment called Cassandra Speaks. And it's written by a woman called Elizabeth Lesser. Cassandra Speaks, written by Elizabeth Lesser. And the subtitle is What the World Would Be If Women Told the Stories. Forget Achilles, Socrates, Aristotle, all the great white male privileged geezers. What would have happened if actually Eve had told her own story of being cast out of the Garden of Eden? Because to be truthful, you know, Job went against God. I'm not religious, but I know stories. So Job went against God. Cain and Abel, there were a load of blokes who said to God and to Jesus, nah, ain't doing it, man. You know, I'm doubting you. All of mankind did not get cursed afterwards because of them. Men didn't have to have like terrible pain in their testicles every month. No, but Eve, the woman, went against, and yeah, and apparently were cursed with childbearing periods and the menopause. Although to be truthful, I'm very proud that I have born children and have been strong enough to, and gone through a life of menstruation and have also now hit my menopause. Yes. So it's a brilliant, brilliant book. Do not undervalue your voice. Do not undervalue your story. If anything, speak it louder, because you're going to be quietened by other people. Right. Now, is Louisa there? Louisa, is it working now? God damn. This is my face. Louisa? No. Okay. So would anybody else like to go? Because like there's only a couple of people left. Anybody want to share what they've done?
I don't mind.
Oh, I love that. Just own that as well. Say, yes, I will. Because it's important. Yeah.
I have an interview coming up for a board that I'm a bit nervous about. So I was thinking about it in terms of that, because I think I'll have to. So it's more of a work one than a personal one.
Yeah, perfect.
So some of my values are, I don't like when people don't do like wallow and like don't do any, I'm very much like, if I'm in a situation, I'm gonna take action to get through it. I don't like to sort of sit back and just be saying woe is me. I'm always proactive and wanting to find a way through things. And then the other thing that I'm really passionate about is access to the arts. So my vision and dream would be equality in the arts, and everyone can see themselves through the stories that are shown in all the different art forms. So the threat to that would be the establishment and the status quo, where the majority of arts organisations are run by older white people. And then the allies for my vision would be the current movements that are happening, and people calling places out on like social media and things like that. And then the big picture, so the final thing would be that everyone feels seen and heard and can engage with the arts, and they see it as important, they see themselves as being creative, and it brings awareness to issues within different communities that the wider public might not have known about otherwise.
Excellent. Cal, for your piece of advice, little piece of advice, is when you're going into an interview, and I'm sure you wouldn't have done this anyhow, to be truthful, don't say something negative about, like, I don't like people who don't do, because then they'll go, oh, she might not be a team player. So you have to think of that. And one of my perfect moments was once when I had an interview, and they said, what is one of your negative traits? You know, something negative about yourself that you might struggle with in the job. And I said, sometimes I expect as much from other people as I do from myself.
Right.
And that's a very good way of saying I do a huge amount, and sometimes it's a bit difficult for me when other people don't. Yeah. The other thing is that for me, and this is my thing, I believe everybody's doing as best as they can.
Yeah.
In their given situation. You know, my mom has been the best mom that she can, even though, you know, she was taking antidepressants and goodness knows, and lots of people might have said she was a work shirker, but she was doing the best that she could. And one of the cultural things that we're living in at the moment is we're living in a time of binary narratives, of division. And it's almost like we're made to believe that this group of people is good and this group of people is bad, that Brexit is you're either in or you're either out, that you're for gun reform or you're against guns. And it's either one or the other, black and white, right or wrong. And actually it's not. It isn't. It is all of our lives are the messy grey shit, excuse my language, in between those 2 points. So I think one of the reasons that the newspapers, and, you know, I've been reading a lot of stuff, and it's all so separatist that you can't be this thing if you're that thing. You can't be. This goes back to this idea of one of the most difficult things we need to do at the moment is hold the complexity of our own story so that we can understand the complexity of others. It is easier for us to think one thing about a group of people. I do a lot of race awareness training as well. And I might say, draw a picture, first thing that comes into your head, of a Muslim woman. And then write, and this is like with various different groups in different communities, just write as many words as you can, first things that come into your head or that you've seen in like newspapers, what you think about Muslim women, what you think is true. And they'll go, no confidence, they're dominated by their husbands, they're blah, 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 blah. Because that's the story they've been told. It is one story that is always shown. And it's easier for us to believe that, because then we can justify certain behaviors that we might have, like me with the trans women. And you have to lean into those beliefs that we have that make us uncomfortable, or that we know, you know, is that right or is that wrong? No, it's easy for me to believe that all Muslim women are like this. That's it. Because then I don't actually have to look back at my behavior, my husband's behavior, my community's behavior towards these people. I can deny white privilege, because then I don't have to look at the discomfort of being a colluder in a system that oppresses people of colour. I don't have to think of racism as being anything to do with me, because like white privilege doesn't exist. So there's something about, we literally have to stick our fingers in the wounds of our discomfort in order to find out where those things are coming from. It's hard work being human and developing, but it is just joyous. It is just joyous when you find new ways of connecting with people and new stories to share. And I would always share in all of the artwork that you do, stories make people curious. You create a story, whether through pictures, whether through dance, whether through drama, whether through written, whatever. Stories make people curious, and they lean into stories and go, oh, I didn't know that about them. It brings people together. The amount of work I've done, I've worked in Palestine, I've worked in war-torn countries, I've worked with street gangs, I've worked in prisons, in areas of high division and high hatred for the other. And then suddenly I start with traditional stories, and somebody will tell one story like Takdir, and then somebody will say, oh, we've got a story like that, but it's this one. And suddenly you start to mesh people together through these shared stories that are in no way threatening. I wrote an article. I sound so cool. I'm so not. I wrote an article for the Oxford University Press. It's in their community development journal for anybody who's academic. And it's called Storytelling, Conflict and Diversity. It's an academic paper, and I never went to university. And that's all about how you can use storytelling to bring communities together. It's available online. Okay. That was working with the Bangladeshi grandmothers. They were hilarious. We had such fun. I'm going to ask, are there any questions? I know that I haven't done anything about body language, but it's all on Vavavoom. Literally everything. There's 5 episodes of Vavavoom Your Zoom with Katrice Horsley, and anything you need to know about how to remember information, how to like put your own spin on stuff that you want to tell, how to use your body, how to use your voice in different ways. Your voice is like a piece of elastic, and you can twist it, you can stretch it, you can slow it down, you can make it warmer, you can spit stuff out. So there's a load of stuff on the Vavavoom Your Zoom. Anything you need, it's there. Are there any questions that you've got before we finish? I've got 10 minutes. Is there anything you want me to talk about? Anybody, you can put your hand up and then tell me. Yes, Verity.
Thanks for a really interesting session. I was just wondering if I found it really interesting, the kind of like the wheel of the different steps in kind of telling your story and giving it a narrative. And I was just wondering if you had any kind of tips for doing something like that in maybe like a longer written piece, like things like writing a dissertation, which kind of gets quite like boring and dry, and maybe how to just like inject a bit more kind of like personality and narrative in something like that, where you're not really allowed to kind of write in first person. But
like narrative by stealth,
where you have to be a bit more kind of like, I don't know, objective, and you can't be as kind of like passionate, but still to make it engaging. Sorry if that, yeah. If that makes sense.
That is great, because I'm also going to recommend this book. This is also on my Vavavoom Your Zoom, but it's called Houston, We Need a Narrative. And Randy, which I always think is a hilarious name, Randy used to be a marine biologist. He was a scientist who went into script writing in Hollywood. And now he's gone back to working with scientists. And all these scientists are like, we don't need stories. And then people go, we don't believe science, Trump. And what Randy is saying is, all you scientists need to use story. And he was actually saying that, right, IMRA is what is like this is if you're giving a science paper, you have your introduction, you have your methods, your results, and your discussion, right? So introduction, methods, results, discussion. That's your story. You've got your introduction, so the start of the story, how you're setting it up, your methods and your and we discovered this and we discovered this, and then from that we got this information, and then how you're going to share that big picture at the end. So in actual fact, most dissertations and most scientific papers are written already with a story structure. So I would strongly suggest, this is also on my Vavavoom Museum, okay, and there's a whole thing about structures. So have a look at that, but I would strongly recommend, if you're thinking that there's some very dry material that you want to kind of vav up, it's a great book to help you do that.
Thank you, Alex. Really, really interesting.
Really is. I love it. I've got my friend, Dr. Lucy Rogers, who's on Twitter and is wonderful. She was the judge in Robot Wars. I feel so much cooler for knowing her. And she's she puts the gut in the word geek, and I love her for it. I can't believe that we're friends, because anyhow, but she does a lot on Twitter, Dr. Lucy Rogers, about presentations and stuff as well. She's an engineer, a member of the Royal School of Engineers, and also a visiting professor at Brunel. And she recommended this book. It's very good. There's so many books. If you know, I'm going to come to you, Ruth. If any of you want to email me for book recommendations, please do so, or like tweet me at Katrice Horsley, and then just DM me, and I'll give you because I'm so lonely in Sweden. Ruth, what were you going to say?
I was just wondering, in terms of like incorporating your own narrative into a story or a script, is there a way like to do it that you don't kind of like, I don't know, expose like your soul? Like, 'cause I feel like, say like when I was doing my training in acting, I'd always try to like obviously identify with the character so much that, like, I don't know, it'd make me, if the character's anxious, I'd become more anxious, and like in a way, in negative ways. The kind of a way of separating like work from like your own experience that you recommend.
I think I think there's a different question there. And I think the question is, how can I not separate myself but still keep myself not anxious, or kind of not feeling those emotions? Because essentially, as an artist and as working in theatre and stuff, put all of yourself into your characters without doubt. You know, that's what a bloody skill that is. What an amazing ability that is. But it's finding that way of just keeping yourself off, the person who isn't your character, your true self, comfortable and safe.
Yeah.
This will take more time, but can you DM me on Twitter,
definitely.
and I will definitely answer that. Absolutely no problem. And I love you asking the question. Right, any more questions? Because that's 3 minutes left.
Could you put your email maybe in the chat, please?
Yes, absolutely.
Love to reach out to you.
So that is, oh look, I wrote bye and thank you to Katrice, and then I forgot to send it. Oh well. Okay, we won't do that. A little bit slow. To everyone. Yeah, so it's Narrative for Change. And that's at gmail.com. Narrative for Change at gmail.com. It helps if I press send. Damn. My hair is representative of my state of mind. It's like my synapses are coming out of my head. Right. I hope you all got something from that. I will tell you that you have given me a huge amount It is very difficult in Sweden at the moment, not because of lockdown, but because Sweden is a very closed country. I have lost almost all of my work since moving to Sweden, and of course because of Corona there's no traveling to do conferences and stuff. So what you have given me in coming to this meeting and in sharing your stories and in stepping forward has been suckle for my soul, has been food for my soul. So I want to thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you all. I hope you all enjoyed the session. The recording and notes will be available, so we will send that to everyone as well.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Thank you, Katrice.
Lovely.
It was.
It's very lovely.
It was a nice little group, wasn't it?
Yeah, lovely. And all girls, I mean, great. Absolutely. So you know, and they were talking about that thing about validity of story, validity of voice. So yeah, that's good. That's good.
Good. No, thank you really much, Katrice. Really appreciate that. And I think we'll be in touch again, definitely. So
I hope so. I hope so. As I say, I'm desperate for work. Absolutely. I mean, I need paid work. I really need paid work. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
perfect. Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye.
Take care and yourself. Bye.
Bye.